Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I did About Me, but I started collecting these maps probably about 30 years ago. I started collecting Iowa maps for a cartography class I was taking, and said, "Oh, to become a better cartographer, collect the maps you like." And I just sort of got into collecting just all the art on the old road maps. Worked as a cartographer for Defense Mapping Agency, and then they've changed names a couple of times. Now we're National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And I worked at, used to be a cartographer, and then I was a geospatial intelligence analyst. Then I was a lithographic imaging specialist. And then I was a photogrammetric cartographer, now I'm a photogrammetrist, whatever that means. But basically I work with satellite imagery, and I'm trying to implement stuff in the cloud for our office. But at any rate, I'll let you get by the camera here. Here, go on to the next slide. And I figured I'd put together this. I started looking for maps for the museum about, I don't know, 2 years ago. And I found a few Model T Ford maps. I figured, well, maybe I'll try and put together a presentation for the homecoming about maps and Model Ts. And the more I started working on it, I thought, well, maybe I ought to talk a little bit about how automobile maps started and the whole history of them. And it really started with the Good Roads movement, which was really started in like the late 1870s, early 1880s, when they came out with the first like safety bicycles, where, you know, 2 wheels the same size that you could pedal. They then, people would buy these bikes, they wanted roads they could run them on, and they'd like to go out in the countryside and back. And so they started pushing for improving the dirt roads and gravel roads so that they could ride their bikes on it. And then the farmers were also in on that because, hey, improved roads means we can get our stuff to market cheaper and make more money. And so they started backing the Good Roads movement. And around like 1900, the early 1900s, as automobile manufacturing started to increase, the whole goods, it sort of got taken over by the automobile industry, and then lobbying to get better roads for automobiles to, you know, bring in the latest and greatest and better ways to do things. I did bring some examples. Yeah, I got this one here. This is 1890s, but it's a Milton Bradley map of a bicycle map of Wheeling, West Virginia. And I just, you know, I saw it, it was cheap enough, so I bought it. I have some other examples over there. There's a 1902 Illinois bicycle map by Mendenhall that five years later they issued as an automobile map. They just changed the text and added inset maps. But it's kind of funny that they didn't recompile it. They just took what they had and, oh, we could sell this to automobile owners. And I was reading that like the first automobiles were first commercially sold in the United States in 1893, and the first commercially available automobile maps were in 1894. So I mean, they go hand in hand. You want to drive your car somewhere, you got to have a map to get you there and back. Here we go to the next slide here. Yeah, so once they started, making maps for the Good Roads movement, a lot of these automobile companies they didn't want to spend the money it'd take to compile a map, because it takes quite a bit of labor to go out and drive all these roads and put them all down correctly on a map. So it was a lot cheaper if you hired somebody to just drive the road and write down the driving directions between, Richmond and Indianapolis, which turns you had to make and what to watch out for. And so they started coming out with the guidebooks and driving directions. Well, that didn't work well because it really called for maps and driving directions. And so they would start putting like inset maps in, but that again was expensive. And then I did have an example of a book here where the guy tried the idea between Chicago and Lake Geneva in Wisconsin. He drove the route and he took photographs of all the turns and then annotated the photographs with arrows and made the whole route, but it was so expensive to produce that they never produced another one. They went out of business. But some guy in I guess 2005 drove the same route in his car and took pictures where this guy took pictures, and it has what it looked like in 1905 and what it looked like in 2005. And it's a really interesting book. But it's put out by the University of Chicago Press, I think. But I got it from the Chicago Map Society. But a neat old guide. And then I have on here, they started forming these automobile associations. And I don't know if that was like, started off with the insurance industry. So they'd have sponsors. And then you had people that just wanted to boost their town. And then they wanted to sell books. But here's an example of an old Scarsboro guide with driving directions, and it's got some inset maps. There's not many inset maps, it's mostly all driving directions. But they did issue a fold-out map, but the map with this one is just awful because if you get off the grid, you have nowhere on the waffle iron. You can't tell where you're at if you got lost, and it's just impossible to use. And unfolding that in your car. I looked at this earlier, I believe this is 1911. But anyway, they had other associations like the Blue Book Guides. And here's one, it's not so blue anymore, it's 100,
Is it
whatever.
here?
Yeah, well, this would be 106
so,
years
just,
old.
Up and down.
It has the same driving directions, some color ads in it. And they had maps in the back. But and they also sold ads in these to help defray the printing costs. So you'll see like local ads for local businesses along these routes. But they made these blue books. I'm guessing up until like the 1930s. It really didn't, and they may still have some of those around. Go to the next slide here. There's some examples of the maps. You can't really see them in back on the screen here. But I know like, I have this one out here. This is a little river-to-river guide across Iowa, and it was done in 1910. But the cartographer that did this map, he did like a atlas map of the state of Iowa, and then he got the contract in the 1890s to start doing all the soil maps for all the counties in Iowa, and then he used that as a base map for an atlas that he sold at the World's Fair in St. Louis. And then he took those plates, had his sons drive them in their cars and make individual route maps of all the counties across the state. And so then he'd issue the separate county maps, and he'd also issue these guides, and he made like 12 or 15 of these. Different ones across the state of Iowa. And then once he got all the guides done, then he produced a state atlas. And I have it underneath the PC here. I won't open it right now. But in 1912, this is a 1913 version. It was smaller enough to use in your car. The other one's almost too big. But it has all the counties and directions and ads in it. And they were making money not only selling the atlas, but selling the ads in the atlas. And then he's like reusing plates that he produced for other purposes, trying to just drive the cost down. But a lot of these maps, when they were made, they weren't updated very regularly, and then some of them were just hideously bad. I'll get on to the next slide here. Try not to talk too long. Here I try to make just a short general history. I'm sure you can't read it back. But basically, I think I pretty much mentioned a lot of this stuff. Like Rand McNally issued its first automobile road map in 1904. Rand McNally started making, they got their start in the 1860s, I think, printing tickets for railroads, and then they got into making railroad timetables and then maps for railroads, and then it was just natural for them to expand into making automobile maps. I put that in 1905, St. Louis had the first commercial operating gas station in the country. It was in St. Louis, and I just wanted to say hey for our club. This gas station is no longer there, and it was like almost like a brick shed with a big tank on the roof, and the guy would just time out the gas into your car, and you had to believe it. It didn't have those visible pumps or anything, so it was kind of questionable. I have 1907, they started producing those photo guides, I guess that, they tried that and failed, and Rand McNally did. And then what do I have here? Oh, like 1918 is when Wisconsin started implementing the modern road numbering systems for odd and even numbered state routes going north and south and east and west. What else do I have on here? It's here in 1924, Rand McNally publishes their first atlas, their automobile atlas. That didn't come around until 1924, which is kind of surprising, but they're everywhere now, but now they're not selling very well because everybody has a cell phone. So it's sort of destroying their business. I have 1926 is when they started doing the federal system for numbering highways and routes. So up until that, I had a little bit of discussion earlier about the Blaze Trail guides, and I have it in my next set of slides here. And Route 66 started in 1926 as well. And I read off the Rand McNally website there saying that Charles Lindbergh used Rand McNally railroad maps when he went to fly to Paris, on his U.S. part of the tour, I guess. And we'll go to the next one here. This one I started talking a little bit about Blaze Trails, and I guess I'll walk over here and move this camera. Sorry about that.
All right.
Okay, we can put it on that table.
Yeah.
Back in the day, this one's got a little gap in it, but they would have kids go out and basically paint fence posts with the trail marker that they blazed the trail for. Like the first one, I think in Iowa was like in 1911, where they called it the White Way, where they just had a kid. It was a bunch of Boy Scouts go out and paint fence posts white, every half mile, every mile, all the way across the state, so people would know, that was the route. But as time went on, everybody's posts got more and more complicated and harder to keep track of. And because, on this one, I defy you to, find all those routes on this map, but that's how they came up with the idea of putting east and west and north and south odd and even road numbers. And trying to give people a sense of direction, as the numbers increase, the further west you are, or the further north or further south. But that system really started in the teens, and every state had like their own system, and then finally by 1926 they came up with a federal system and forced everybody to follow it. So that a lot of these trails were like, trails in theory, where they would just do like, dirt roads and call it a national highway because they wanted to draw that business to, Uncle Sam's General Store. And there was just lots of bad blood and these different clubs competing for routes. But, and I have some examples, and you're free to come up here and take a look at this stuff. Here's an earlier one. On this one, it looks like there's only about 20 blaze trails, and this is probably from around 1915 or so. But there's a far fewer. As time goes on, more and more of those trails proliferate, and the harder and harder it is to use the map. This is still it's a color map, but it's still kind of hard to follow where those trails are on here. But anyway, I don't know. I guess if you want to read more about it, read my slide. I'm sure they're going to post it on the website for the museum. Let's see if I get the next one. Oh, there's illustrations of the guides. Oh, let me go back one here. And then from what I was reading, the standardized numbering system that we use today started in Wisconsin in 1918, and then it sort of like grew, and other people said, hey, this is a good idea, and then they implemented it nationally by about 1926. And there's just all these different trail companies, they get their name in a tour book, and then they try and get people to stop by their stores, and so you had all these competing schemes to get people to go their right way instead of the shortest route. And it was just, there's good reasons why we came up with the number system we have now. Let me go with the next one. And that's me saying that same stuff again. Oh, here's a map I have of Iowa from 1930 advertising that the state had paved enough roads that they considered themselves out of the mud. And I have like an interesting old guide here. This is a story of the race, and it's a advertising material from Ford in 1910. This is an actual one. They did a bunch of different reproductions, but it has a map of the route that they took across the U.S. to go from New York to Seattle in 1909. The book's dated 1910, but the race was in 09. Well, that section between Chicago and St. Louis, it took them in race cars in 1909 33 hours to go from Chicago to St. Louis. And then in here, on the center staple cover, they had a real good line, if I can find it here. Come on, open out of it. Come on. There we go. Here, they have various clippings from the newspapers from that era, and it states complaints of bad roads, and oh, here we go, rendering extra speed impossible. Yeah, St. Louis is a mud hole. And that was their big thing. They had to go across, on this race, they had to go across the country in Missouri instead of Iowa, because Iowa was even worse. You know, all that topsoil, it just turns, when it rains, it just turns into a quagmire. Also in this book, they advertised the latest Model Ts, and you can see on some of the ads that headlights were an option in 1910. I couldn't imagine buying a car and having headlights as an option. But at any rate, let's see what else I got on here. Oh, I just brought a variety of guides here. Somewhere over on that table I have the 1909 map of Wayne County, which has Richmond on it, and it's an automobile map from way back in the day. Also, I've got other guides. Oh, this one I was showing earlier. Get that off there. And it's a US 40 guide from around, I think this is probably late 20s, probably around 28, 29. But it has an ad for death on the highway and a road hog. But some of the ads in these old magazines are pretty wild. Advertising the route. This one is the scenic trail. So they're advertising, hey, people, now that we've renumbered the road, as US 40, please take it, drive and patronize the businesses off the route. But this one, I think it's also from around 1928, but it was a local atlas put up by the Richmond Palladium, whatever that newspaper was. But it's just a little road atlas of this area. I guess they're using the Hammond maps, but I think again it's probably like 1928, 1929. It's a little newer than the Model T era, but I thought it was interesting. And what else did I have up there? Oh, here's for the people living in Cincinnati, showing a little map of day trips they could take in the area around Cincinnati with various maps of the routes. But this is 1924. It's not Model T, but I figured you guys would like it here at the museum. Did I have anything else up there? Oh, examples of Graham McNally maps or Blaze Trail maps. Here, this one is a Gulf automobile map, but on the back they show the old Blaze Trail markings because it dates to around 1920. It might be before that. I have to look at the dates. But it's Pennsylvania. You can't really see, but if you came up here, you know, we got a few minutes. I don't know. Yeah, I opened this one up earlier. It's a 1918 map of Indiana, but the guy that the map is only half of it's there, but the half that's there is really interesting. It was owned by a shoe salesman that his route was the southern half of Indiana, so he just ripped the top of the map off, threw it out, and then marked his route on the southern half. But it's just a needle, showing how maps were used back then. This one, this isn't a map, it's just driving directions from Cheyenne to Laramie, Wyoming. But it was issued probably around 1910, and to tourists to get them from one point to the other, but they didn't give a map. But I guess, I don't know, maybe there weren't very many roads to turn off on between those two towns, I don't know. I've got other examples of maps up here and a few Ford maps. I'm going to get through my slides so I get some time for questions from you folks. This one is a scan of the shoe map that I was just held up recently, showing just the southern half of the map exists. Here, this is an amazingly awful map. I have this listed under bad maps. But this is like a 1912 free automobile map giveaway. And all the maps are this way, but here, if you wanted to go from La Crosse, Wisconsin to Flaherty of St, it shows you the route, but it doesn't show you any crossroads. So if you get off that main route, you have no way to know how to get back. And they're all that way. It's like, how much effort did it take to make the map and then to make it this lousy? They had to go out of their way to do that. I have this little example here. I thought it was funny. It was really cheap, but it says up to the minute auto road map, and it's probably dated from like 1928, and I'm sure it hasn't been updated since 1928, but they still say up to date. But anyway, what else I got here? Oh yeah, here's an example of that Scarsboro map, where I had the Scarsboro route guide up, but the map is almost impossible to use because it looks like a waffle iron. You have no idea if you got off the wrong road how to get back to the road you want. Here I put together a few of the Model T maps that I've found. They are really rare. I think that they printed quite a few of them, but people just threw them out. Didn't think they'd ever be worth anything, but like, here's one of Iowa that it just advertises the Ford car on the front cover, and truck or tractor, but it's, I don't know, date is this, it's the late teens, probably like 1918, 1919. Oh, 1920 is an ad, so 1920. Here's a ad for a used car dealer in Wisconsin advertising selling used Model Ts. But I thought that kind of neat. The other two examples I have on there with the four-door and the Minnesota map, I donated to the museum already, so they're in their collections and they didn't bring them over today in the rain. But they are out there, and I'm always looking for more. And if you come across any, let me know, and I'll see about getting them to the museum. Back up. Oh yeah, so I brought a bunch of books if you wanted to read more about maps. The good ones, this is a really good book about just the free giveaway automobile maps from gas station companies, starting from the 20s up until, I guess they probably stopped giving away in the 70s, early 80s. And here's this story of the Pathfinder. It's about a guy that who was a professional Pathfinder for those touring book companies, and it's just all the weird stories he has about being in the middle of nowhere and trying to figure out, if he broke down, how to get back to civilization. But it was an interesting book. The rest of the stuff are pretty academic. I also put a bunch of links into various websites and articles in here if you guys want to use them. And then, I collect mainly Iowa maps, and but if you come across any old Iowa maps, I'm interested in them. And I have a large collection, and I'm hoping to write a book about this atlas here that the computer's sitting on, but it was published in 1912 in Iowa, and it was the first automobile atlas of the state. and I'm just trying to collect all the other various maps that this company created. I don't know, you guys got any questions? I haven't got a whole lot more here. I feel like I'm talking fast. I know I'm sweating. But I think it's a humidity here. But yeah, if you want to come up and look at them, I'll be happy to pull them out. There's quite a variety of stuff. Some of these, like, you know, they would issue county maps, and then they would sell like a road map version that you could fold up, put in your car, but then they would also sell these kind that you could hang at the general store and sell advertising for. So some of that stuff's kind of interesting. I don't know. Yeah, here, this is just an interesting old early trucking map, you know, trying to show people how to get from various places in eastern Iowa. But it's, you know, old, and there are not many of them, and it's by this Hewinger's company that I'm trying to collect. I don't know, pull this across. Here's an example of a Mendenhall Automobile Map, and then here's the bicycle map that goes with it. The bicycle map was issued in 1902. They just basically reissued it, colorized it, and output it as an automobile map rather than recompile it. Yeah, here's a neat advertising map. Goodrich did a whole bunch of these in various states where they're trying to sell tires. Yeah, but back in the Model T era, the tires, you'd be happy if you got 5,000 miles out of a tire, you know, with all the horses still on the road throwing nails and shoes and all that stuff. But they issued a really nice series of these maps, and they're easy to use and pretty well done. I laid out this, I don't know that I want to pick it up, but it's a 1909 map of Wayne County. And it shows Richmond and the roads of Wayne County way back in the day. This one, this is a page out of an atlas, but it shows a map shop and how they made maps back in the turn of the century. So this is from 1905, but it shows their large format camera and the guys making touch-ups to photo positives, and then they'd shoot them with the camera and then photo reduce them, and then they would then copy that lithographic plates, and these would be like stone lithographs that they would print from. And it's interesting, you know, so they have the map shop on one side advertising, and on the back they have the lithographic printers on the other, bragging that they produced atlases. But it's an interesting old illustration. Yeah, and I think I lifted these up earlier. I didn't pull this one up. Here's like an early Good Roads map. This is from 1902, showing western Iowa, but they're showing basically the good farm roads to take your stuff to Council Bluffs to sell it if you're a farmer. And where is it? Well, I guess it's advertising John Vino's country store. But and then I think I've already lifted up all these various Blaze trail maps. So, any questions? No? I dazzled you into silence? All right, well, I'm not sure how we're doing this going forward with, there's another presentation at 10 o'clock, but I was going to leave these maps. I may move them over to the side table so that he has the front table to work with, if you want to look at this stuff. But yeah, they are all pretty much 100-year-old papers. So I don't have the schedule in front of me. Hopefully they're here. They told me I had from 9 to 9:45, so I went a little bit over, but we started a little bit late.
What about AAA? They were in this?
Yeah, they started early, and I know they did their like route guides and yeah. I know they're early. It's just outside of what I usually collect, but I know that I've seen AAA maps from the 1920s, so I know they're in existence then. I don't know if they had stuff in the teens, but oh, that big loop. Is that late teens or? Yeah. But I've seen some of the maps that, like it's like 1914, 1913 advertising that route. And so it may be earlier than that, just tourism, yeah. Well, I guess they make more on insurance and people have more car rents, right? But